members of the jury. Sometimes when something bad happens to us, or to our family, or to our friends, we look for someone else to blame. And that's a natural reaction. But whether it's natural or not, it's not right, it's not fair, it's not just. And that is what the plaintiff is doing here today. The plaintiff is trying to take the easy way out. The easy way is blaming Worcester High School. And that is misplaced blame. Ava Johnson had a very serious disease and was taking a very serious medication to treat it. Sometimes a combination like that can cause very serious consequences. And that's heartbreaking. But it's no excuse to start pointing fingers. The blame for Ava's death, that blame lies somewhere else. Where does it lie? What did lead to Ava Johnson's suicide? The answer is simple. Corticosteroids and systemic lupus. We are all here today because a bad drug killed a good girl. We are all here today because corticosteroids and systemic lupus created a storm in Ava's body that caused her to commit suicide. Remember, the plaintiff had the burden of proof today. It sat at this table. It never shifted, it never lessened. The plaintiff had the burden to prove that Worcester High School, by an affirmative act of negligence, failed to use reasonable care under the circumstances. And they had to prove this by a preponderance of the evidence. They didn't. Because while they gave excuses, while they pointed fingers, the important questions were left unanswered. So, what did the plaintiff give us? What were their answers? What is their proof? That what Ava experienced at prom was a substantial factor in her suicide? Ladies and gentlemen, now that you've seen all the evidence and heard all of the testimony, you know the plaintiff failed to meet her burden. At the close of these arguments, Her Honor will instruct you on the law, and she will tell you that in order to find Worcester High School liable, the plaintiff must prove that any harm for which she seeks compensation from the defendant was caused by the defendant. So let me take you back to look through the evidence one more time to see if any of the harm sustained by Ava was the result of actions of Worcester High School. To start, you heard today, Ava said her problems began in June of 2016 when she was diagnosed with lupus. Because of that disease, Ava suffered from joint pain, hair loss, acne, lesions on her face. That harm was not caused by Worcester High School. In fact, they didn't even know about it. You also learned today how Ava's lupus became uncontrollable and she was searching for relief. So her doctor prescribed her corticosteroids, 40 milligrams of prednisone at the most, over the course of over a year. Jamie Lee got up on that stand today and told you all how Ava's body and mind reacted to just 40 milligrams of prednisone. How Ava started gaining weight, losing interest in activities she once enjoyed, performing poorly in school. But we now know the reason for all of that. We know that Ava was diagnosed with depression in 2017. Next, you heard how Ava told Dr. Smith that the bullying at school had died down just in time for prom. Ava was excited. She was thrilled. She even got a new dress to wear. But unfortunately for Ava, something that tends to keep happening, that's when things got much worse. Ava called Dr. Flores on June 2nd, complaining once again of extreme joint pain, open lesions on her face. Her hair was even falling out. Ava was experiencing another flare-up of her lupus. And with her senior prom just 1 week away, Ava called her doctor begging for relief. Relief that would kill her. But once again, not because of Worcester High School. Because once again, Worcester High knew nothing about it. Members of the jury, you now know 100 milligrams of prednisone is a lethal dose. You now know that just 50 milligrams of prednisone can cause visual hallucinations, psychotic delusions, paranoia, and thoughts of suicide. On June 2nd, Ava started taking 100 milligrams of prednisone. And within 24 hours, Ava started hallucinating. She started seeing people around her wearing the masks of US presidents, and men in long coats staring at her through her window at night. Within 24 hours, Ava started experiencing these psychotic delusions. She told her mother that her only friends were dead presidents, and that her boy Nixon would never let her down. Within 24 hours, Ava became paranoid. She accused her best friend Jamie Lee of trying to record their conversation. She screamed at her friends at prom, accused them all of whispering about her, and said, "I know you guys are planning to kidnap me and throw me on the train tracks." And within 24 hours of taking that 100 milligrams of prednisone, Ava Johnson became suicidal. She left the prom on the night of June 9th, walked to those train tracks, and took her own life. But the plaintiff wants you to ignore everything I've just said. They want you to focus on Blake Davis, who got up on that stand today. But members of the jury, don't be a part of his promotion. Do not join his campaign. Blake Davis is doing this for the worst of all possible reasons. What is his motivation? It's money. He's trying to make money off of Ava Johnson, off of the victim. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is despicable. The only reason Blake Davis is in this courtroom today is to write about it in his tell-all book and to get back at Worcester High for firing him. But as Her Honor will instruct you on the law as well, she will tell you that you are permitted to give the witnesses and their testimony whatever weight you feel is appropriate. That means you may believe all of what a witness tells you, some of what a witness tells you, or none of what a particular witness tells you. And in doing so, you also must consider whether that witness has an interest in the outcome of this case. Blake Davis has an interest in the outcome of this case, the two I just mentioned, and both only serve his own self-interest. Blake Davis only cares about Blake Davis. He never cared about Ava Johnson, and for that reason, he cannot be trusted. Who else did the plaintiff bring you today? Dr. Billy Jones, an expert who gave you an incomplete review of the file, an expert who put her opinion together without noting what medical records she reviewed. And because of that, she couldn't tell you all of the physical or mental symptoms that Ava Johnson experienced. She couldn't tell you any of that. But most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, she couldn't tell you that Ava was prescribed 100 milligrams of prednisone just days before committing suicide. If she had known those things, if she had completed and conducted a proper review, maybe she would have realized that what caused Ava's depression, what caused her suicide, was lupus and corticosteroids. Exactly what Dr. Wolf told you today. Because that's what caused her symptoms, not bullying. The plaintiff is asking you to ignore the medical records and the medical literature you've all heard today. They want you to ignore Ava's lupus, Ava's depression, Ava's long-term steroid use, the lethal dose of prednisone Ava started taking on June 2nd, the hallucinations, the delusions, the paranoia. They want you to ignore all of that and say that bullying was the greatest factor in her death. Members of the jury, the plaintiff may get up here after me, but nothing he tells you can make up for what they didn't do during this trial. Prove their case. All they can do is continue to make accusations they have not proved. How does Worcester High defend itself against untrue accusations such as the ones the plaintiff has presented today? The law has a way. It's called the burden of proof. It says that to the plaintiff, you must prove an accusation when you make it by a preponderance of the evidence. It means that by merely saying something is true doesn't make it true, no matter how many times you say it or how many different ways you say it. The truth doesn't change. The plaintiff must prove by a preponderance of the evidence that Worcester High School was the cause of Ava's injuries. You now know they haven't done that. When you return to the jury room, you're going to be given a verdict form. That looks just like this. There will be 2 questions on this verdict form. The first will read, did Worcester High School, by an affirmative act of negligence, fail to use reasonable care under the circumstances? And you all already know the answer to that. The harm Ava suffered was the result of her lupus and her corticosteroid treatment, neither of which Worcester High School had any knowledge of. Worcester High cannot reasonably be expected to prevent against every incident, harm, or disaster that could ever possibly be conceived. And more importantly, the law doesn't require them to. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, what we have here today is a case of misplaced blame. The plaintiff is blaming Worcester High School for a medication they did not for a medical condition they did not cause or even know about, and a treatment they did not prescribe or have any knowledge of. But was that bullying a substantial factor in her suicide? But for that bullying, would Ava Johnson still be alive today? No, she would not. Ladies and gentlemen, you now know it was the combination of corticosteroids and systemic lupus that led Ava Johnson to commit suicide. Mark no. And once you mark no, this case is over. You need go no further. What happened to Ava Johnson on June 9th, 2018 was tragic. No one's denying that. No mother should ever have to bury her child. No girl should ever have to say goodbye to her best friend. No life should ever be lost at the age of 17. But Worcester High School did not cause Ava Johnson's death. Find Worcester High School not liable. Thank you.
Plaintiff, are you ready to proceed with closing?
Yes, Your Honor.